Good evening and welcome to another Poultry Keepers 360 live stream. We're happy to have you with us tonight. We're going to be talking about Poultry Shows 101. If you have never been to a show, you probably have questions about how do I find them? What do I do when I get there? What can I expect? So, we're going to share all that information with you tonight in just a few seconds. Like I said, just a few seconds, and magically, here's Jeff and Karen with us tonight. Good to see you guys. And you know, I want to say something right up front since we're talking about poultry shows. I really need to remind you guys that we're going to be at the Ohio National to help the APA celebrate their 150th anniversary in November. And I hope you can be there and join us. And we're going to have a great time. There's going to be a lot of birds. They're anticipating probably 13 to 15,000 chickens at that show and probably 1,000 plus exhibitors. Wear your track shoes. You're going to need them to see all that. But it's going to be a fun time. Now, another thing I want to remind you, as we're talking about things, how, well, if you have a question, just type it into us. We'll answer it. If you have a comment, we'll pop it up on the show so everybody can see from it. But just as you experience things, what do you run across? What have you done? How did it work for you? Let us know. We'd be glad to hear it. So, first off, what types of shows are there? There's local and county fairs, and these are primarily for youth members like 4-H and FFA. Some county fairs do have open classes for the adults to participate, but not normally. They're judged by, usually most of the judges are not licensed, but they do a really good job. Now, open shows, which are sanctioned by the APA or American Poultry Association and the American Bantam Association, they use only licensed judges, and they have open classes. Basically, anyone, any age can participate and show birds there. They also have a youth show at so many of them today. They didn't used to do that when I was younger. It was all for adults. But now they've started doing youth shows at so many of them. In addition to the youth poultry show, they also have youth showmanship competition, and that's where the judges are testing the kids on their knowledge of poultry and what do you do for showing it. The complexity of the question varies on the age of the kid, so not everybody's having all the same information thrown at them or same questions answered. But it's a lot of fun to watch those kids participate in those shows and demonstrate how the different parts of a bird and how they pose their bird in the show coop. And there's some crackerjack kids in that program.
All right, I have to stop you already.
Go ahead.
Sanctioned, unsanctioned. What's a judge? How's a judge licensed? Not how. I don't need the 7-year process, but
Sanction shows mean that the show has been the host club that's putting a show on applies to the APA or ABA, typically both of them, to have their show sanctioned, and they agreed to abide by the show rules of both those organizations. APA shows require obviously APA licensed judges. ABA shows require judges licensed in the ABA. A lot of the judges hold a license in both the APA and the ABA, and that's what we call a dual license judge. But
so there's a list of judges out there that you just
there is.
You spin
you can find a list on the American Poultry Association website of all the licensed judges that's out there, as well as on the American Bantam Association website.
So you fly them down and say, "Look at our birds."
That's right.
Okay.
Cast your eye on them.
And unsanctioned, who's judging those?
The
high school gym teacher?
It may be an ag teacher or somebody of that nature, or it may be a longtime poultry exhibitor or somebody in the APA or ABA's apprenticeship program to become a licensed judge.
Okay.
It just varies. I've seen everything from a local feed dealer judging shows and to college kids judging shows. And it's a lot of fun. It's all about the kids. It's all about having fun, and it's all about introducing them to the fascinating world of standardbred poultry.
Okay.
Um, Another thing, that if you've never seen a Sarama show, if you go to a show and they have a Sarama show, take some time to sit there and watch it, because they're banging pans together and making noise like crazy, jumping around, waving their arms to get those birds to stand up, be really alert, flap their wings, crow. It's honestly, it's as much fun watching the exhibitors as it is watching the birds themselves.
We should have pulled a clip of that, Rip.
For one, and I couldn't find one. I couldn't believe it.
Okay.
It's really entertaining. A little more. Some shows have what is called a double show, where all the birds are judged twice by a different panel of judges. So in effect, it's like going to two shows at one place in one day. They may do different colored cards to designate which show is being judged at what time. But and the judges don't judge the same birds when they start over judging again. For example, if I was assigned to judge large fowl, they would send me over to judge a man up to the second show, while the judge would do large fowl in the second show.
All right, you're cutting in and out a little bit, Rip. Is your
Okay.
plug firmly seated?
Is my plug seated, or am I fully seated? Yeah.
No, the plug in the computer, your
Yes
microphone.
to both.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm probably a little bit far from this mic. I'm still learning how to use this thing. Why do we have poultry shows? Um, you know, First, it's a chance to have your birds evaluated by a licensed judge if you go to a sanctioned open show. Um, you may win some prizes. Sometimes it's ribbons, sometimes it's trophies, sometimes it's both, sometimes it's cash awards, sometimes it's all three. It just depends on the shows. Um, while I enjoyed winning the prizes, I think what I got the most out of was the chance to learn more about my breed by talking and visiting with more experienced breeders. And you make some tremendous, tremendous friendships there. So, go prepared to make new friends and visit with old friends. I've still got friends in the poultry fancy that I've had for 50 plus years, and they have become very close to me, and um, they're very dear friends, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. Um, that to me is the real key to a poultry show, is going to learn and going to visit with other people. If you're going to the show for the first time, somewhere off in the corner you'll see probably a little cluster of old guys, and just hang around and listen to them, because you're going to learn things from those folks, because they've had a lot of experiences. Walt Leonard, bless his heart, he's passed on now, but he was the chairman of the Standards Committee for the American Poultry Association for many, many years. And he said that when he was growing up, he'd like to go hang out with the old men, at least those that weren't senile at that point, and just listen to them. You learn a lot just by listening.
And I'm not sure you'll get to this, but I'm going to tell you the common complaint is that they go to a poultry show and everybody ignores them and nobody will talk to them. And do you have any hints as to how to break in, or do you just literally stalk behind them and listen to... I did that. I can tell you that story, but go on.
I think the best thing is to find somebody that maybe has the same breed that you do while you're there, and approach them, say, hey, look, I'm totally new to this. I'm totally new to poultry shows. Could I ask you a few questions? And that approach usually works with most people. Now, there's some folks it may not work with, but by and large, I've not had any problem uh, approaching people and asking for help and for information. And there's nothing wrong, and I'm going to get into this later, but there's nothing wrong with when you're there grabbing somebody and say, "Hey, I'm totally new to this poultry show thing. This is my first show. Can you kind of give me a few pointers on what to look for and how to do it?" And they're happy to do that.
All right, I'll wait and make sure you don't cover it before I ask the questions next time.
That's all right. You're just eager to learn, Karen.
Tell me more.
Well, I talked about friendship, but if you're looking for to get a start in exhibition or standard bred poultry, going to a poultry show is one place that you can do that because typically there is a for sale section. It may be in the other end of the show barn, or it may be outside in the parking lot. You'll see folks gathered around, and they'll have rows of cages with birds in them, and those are for sale birds. But just bear in mind, when you're going there and you're buying birds like that, those are folks' culls. Now they may be high quality culls, but those are birds that those folks didn't want to hang on to as show birds or for potential breeder birds. So if you're going there hoping to get some really good birds, those are the ones that are in the show, and those are the ones you're going to pay a premium for. So be forewarned. It's I also enjoyed going to poultry shows, particularly the ones that I've never been to before, because it gave me a chance to see parts of the country that I never got to see before. And I did this quite a lot with judging. I would have probably never made it out to Pacific Northwest, but I went there on two different occasions to judge poultry up in Washington and uh, Oregon. Beautiful country out there. So if you're going to a show like that, try to build in a little bit of time just to check out and see the sights because, gosh, we got some pretty places in this country. Excuse me. Poultry shows also appeal to folks with a competitive nature because they can accumulate points for certain wins. I've never been that competitive that accumulating points have been all that important to me. I told you why I go to shows, but admittedly, some folks go to get those points and become master exhibitors and master breeders with the American Poultry Association or the American Animal Association. So there is that side of it. I want to plop up the little slide here. How do you find poultry shows? Well, there's several ways you can do that. You can go online to Poultry Show Central. They have a great website, and many of the shows are listed there. You can search them by date. You can search them by location. Uh, Admittedly, all of the information may not be current, but usually there's some contact information for the shows that you can send an email to, or maybe a phone number that you can call to find out more about their particular show. Also online, you can go to Exhibition Poultry Magazine. Uh, you can get, you don't have to subscribe to the magazine. You can get it free as PDF files online, but a lot of the shows are advertised there. Poultry Press, which is a newspaper type publication that is dedicated solely to exhibition poultry. And most all of the shows certainly advertise there in Poultry Press, and you can find out what shows are coming up, uh, where they're at, and when they are. You can also go to the American Poultry Association's website or the American Animal Association website. And again, the list may not be complete because they depend on the individual shows and clubs to provide the information for the website update. So you may have to look in two or three places, but you can find the information there if you want it. It's out there to be had.
And from year to year, those are pretty stable, right? The third weekend in October, the first
Correct.
weekend in November. So
Right.
if it's on Poultry Show Central and it's showing you the 2022 date, you can usually assume it will be very similar for the next year.
Right. It, barring some unforeseen circumstance, I know they've had to bounce around some of the bigger shows because they couldn't get the same date the next year that they had this year. So, but they get as close to it as they possibly can.
The exhibition place, because it takes a special venue to host a poultry show, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Not everybody uh, can do that. It's most of these are in large barns, or if they're on a fairgrounds, you know, it's all going to be metal buildings, and they are not known for the best acoustics in the world. Uh, if you have sensitive hearing, be forewarned. If you go to a show with several thousand birds, it is going to be noisy, big time noisy, particularly if you're there early in the morning when all the males are crowing and doing their thing. But it's an experience, and I'll just leave that there.
So those same earplugs you wear to your rock and roll concerts,
Yes.
You can take them to the poultry show.
Oh, those work well.
Yeah.
So I've even had folks ask me, what do I take to a show? And some of the things that I tell them is,
Your
you know,
dog, right? Make sure to take your
no,
dog.
don't take your dog. Please don't take your dog. You're going to have a bunch of freaked out birds. That has happened before, and it's not a pretty sight. But, you know, wear comfortable clothing that's appropriate for the weather. If it's hot, dress appropriately. Now, and when you're going to shows from one state to the next, you kind of got to check the weather forecast up there, because I've been to some shows that when I left here, it was very nice and comfortable. And when I got up to Birmingham, Alabama, we nearly froze to death, and we didn't have any jacket with us. That was not a fun experience. Be sure and take some comfortable shoes, because usually there's a lot of walking and standing involved. Most shows now are on concrete floors, but some shows do exhibit in like livestock arenas where they have a dirt floor that's uneven and all that. So if you have problems navigating those, that's something you want to be aware of and be prepared for. Be sure and take, well, of course, we've all got cell phones now, but take your camera, because you're going to find a lot of birds you want to photograph, you want pictures of, so you can come back and show to your family or your friends and say, hey, look what I saw. Look at this breed. Look at that breed. They were really cool.
All right, I'm going to do it again, even though you're going to get to it later. So when I'm at a poultry show, are you allowed to take pictures of other people's birds? Like,
absolutely.
So you're like, the bird is there. I can just stand here in front of it and take 400 pictures if I want to. Really?
Not a problem at all. Just don't try to take it out of the coop to take
no touching. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you can look and take pictures, but don't touch.
Okay. There's other places that have rules like that.
Exactly. Not all shows have a concession stand. Many do, so you want to be prepared. You might want to take a sandwich and some snacks and something to drink, just in case the show does not have concession stands. Usually the smaller shows do not have concession stands, although some of them have started. You know, there's a show up in Alabama. They have about 700 or 800 birds, and they got a deal worked out with one of the local food trucks. And they pull up to the show and accommodate all the guests there at the show. But you never know, so just go prepared for that.
So, Rip, if you have 700 or 800 birds,
Mm-hmm.
how many exhibitors? I mean, so as an exhibitor, what's the average amount of birds that a person would take to the show?
I would say somewhere between 5 and 10 for the average exhibitor. Juniors, maybe 1, 2, or 3.
Okay.
Some really serious folks would go 15 or 20 birds plus.
Wow. I was just trying to get, what's the ratio? So if it was somewhere around 7 to 1 on average, so if you got 700 birds, you got 100 people, basically.
Yeah, roughly.
Right. Plus, rubberneckers that are just in there to look around and stuff like that. But
you'd be surprised at the number of shows. For example, the Sunshine Classic in Lake City, Florida, is on the county fairgrounds there, and it's also on the same day that the flea market is open. So you get a lot of traffic. Um, Flea market folks go to the poultry show, and poultry show folks go to the flea market. It's kind of an odd situation, but it's pretty cool. You might want to take along a chair. That seating is usually at a premium at most shows. Uh, they just don't have the seating there, so take along. If you've got a folding camp chair, might want to take that along with you, because you're going to want to rest after a while. And I like to take along a small notebook in case I find a bird I like. I can write down the exhibitor's number, and then and we'll talk about this in a minute. I can check on an exhibitor's list to find out who owns an individual bird, because people's name is not on the coop tag. And I'm going to show you an example of a coop tag later on in this program. So, and that's a whole nother deal. But there is a way to find out who owns a bird, although their name is not on the coop tag. What do you do while you're there? There's some do's and some don'ts, and I'm going to talk about them as we get into this section. But typically, judging starts at a show around 9 o'clock in the morning. Exhibitors are probably there anywhere from 6 o'clock on close to 9, doing the last minute preparations and spit shines on their birds, getting them all trimmed and proper looking. That is not a good time to approach an exhibitor, because they're concentrating on one thing, and that's getting their birds ready. Now, after judging starts, everything kind of calms down, and that's a better time. Any time after 9 o'clock in the morning is probably a good time to approach exhibitors. You're going to find that some aisles are roped off, and that's because a judge is working in a particular aisle.
All right, Rip, I'm going to put that picture back up, the cover picture, while you talk, because some people who have never been can't really even picture what a poultry show looks like. So,
okay.
So you just keep talking, but those are the aisles you're talking about, right?
Yes. That's the spaces between the rows of bird is considered an aisle. This show is the, I think, 2015 American Poultry Association National Meet in Knoxville, Tennessee. And they had pretty close to 2,500, 3,000 birds there. The chickens were down on the ground floor, and then up on that little balcony area, back in the far back, is where they had the waterfowl and the turkeys. But it can be confusing when you get there, and I want to show you how to demystify that and figure out who's on first and who's on second.
Do they have the bantams on top of the large fowl in that?
Some shows they do. They don't in this show. Now, some of the bantams were double coop. What we mean by double deck, where they have one row of cages and then something like plywood or something under that, and another row of cages with another row of birds.
Okay.
That I'm not. If you can avoid it, I'm not a fan of doing a show that way, because that really darkens that bottom row of birds, and it's hard to see them. Ain't nothing like trying to judge a group of black cochin bantams on the bottom deck in an area that doesn't have much light on it. That is no fun whatsoever.
Bring your flashlight, your phone for that one. Light them up.
I've just about had to do that sometimes. Let's see. So if you find an aisle that's roped off and they're judging in there, don't go down in there. And for heaven's sakes, don't interrupt the judge while he's judging. He has to concentrate really hard on what he's doing. And people think that judges, some folks say the judges takes too long. Other folks say the judges don't take long enough. A good judge can judge 300 or 400 birds a day. when you divide that out, they start judging at 9 o'clock. You may or may not be able to take a lunch break during the middle of the day, which is usually about a 10-minute gulp down a hot dog break, and then go right back to it till 5 o'clock when the show's over. I averaged it out one time, and I literally had 2.5 to 3 minutes to evaluate a bird. That's not much time.
You're going to put your hands on about half of those, won't you?
You put your hands on all of them.
Okay.
I mean, that's what the exhibitor's paying for. He's paying for a judge's evaluation. At least that's the way I look at it. And I'm going to do my best to make sure every bird gets the same evaluation. The only time I may not decide to handle a bird, and there's 2 instances. Once is when the bird tries to eat you up when you put your hand near the cage. And the other one is when the bird is obviously sick. I won't handle either of those types of birds. Because I don't want to train.
What if it's just totally not in the breed standard? What if they brought you a golden comet to judge?
Like I would probably write on the coop card lacking in breed characteristics, okay, but I would still handle it.
Okay. Good man. You're a good man.
Well, I'm a little hard-headed, I guess, or a little old-fashioned, but that's just the way I was trained to do it.
Okay.
You know, don't try to talk to a judge when he's working, but after the show's over and you've got some questions for the judge, you know, run him down and ask him questions. I don't know of one that's not willing to answer questions or to provide information, as long as you do it when they're not judging poultry. I know I was always like to help people, and still do to this day and time.
Hence why you're here.
That's right. You can get an exhibitor's list from the show management, and they're just typed up. Each exhibitor is assigned a number, and all of his birds will have that same number on their coop tags. So if it's exhibitor number 17 is Karen Johnson, and she has a Rhode Island Red that I really like, I go over there and say, hey, Karen, I really like that male you got over there. Do you want to sell him? But I know who it is, and if I don't know the person, there's probably somebody there that can point them out to me. So it's easy to get in contact as long as you've got one of the exhibitors list. Most shows provide those free.
Larry wants to know why you're why you don't want to handle the mean birds.
It's just something I'm not going to do. You know, particularly now that I'm on blood thinners.
You don't need extra bloodletting?
No, I have experienced it. You know, there was a white American game, large fowl, at the Florida State Fair one time, and the superintendent was just insistent that I handle him. And I put my hand in that coop, and he spurred me twice on my hand, drew blood with his beak, and the superintendent thought that was absolutely hilarious. I've never wanted to strangle anybody so much in my life.
Okay.
Birds, when you go to a show, are arranged by classes. They're not just put in there. As much as it looks like it's hodgepodge. Karen, go back to that slide that you popped up. No, well, okay, we can do it with this one. In large fowl, the classes, whoa, there we go, are American class, the Asiatic class, continental class, English class, Mediterranean, and all other standard breeds. And the American, the first 5 refer to the location in the world where these birds were developed. American class, you have things like Rhode Island Red.
Oh, hold on. I want Jeff to guess. Jeff, give me an example from each of these classes.
Nope, ain't happening.
It's worth a try.
But thanks.
Karen,
that'd be like me popping up a slide with all the feed categories. Karen, give me an example of each one.
Karen, can you do an example of each category?
Oh,
each
probably
class?
not. American, the best American fowl. That would be the Rhode Island Reds.
Yep.
Asiatic, let's go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Continental. Is that where the Welsumers are? Are they in
Yes.
the Continental? English. Let's see. We got the Black Australorps are in there.
Yes.
Mediterranean. That would be your the flighty birds, the leghorns, and the and the little tiny ones. But
Yes.
I'm not remembering one.
Asiatics would be cochins and brahmas and those
Oh, yeah.
big feather-legged birds.
Carol's trying to help me out here, and she feels sorry that I called Jeff out. All other standard breeds. That's your ornamental birds, right? Your silkies, your
Not necessarily. No. Silkies are not in. They're not a large fowl.
oh,
These will be breeds. Americanas are in the AOSB. Is how we refer to it, just to abbreviate it, so we don't have to write out all other standard breeds.
yeah.
Sumatras are in there. Your game fowl are in there.
Where are the Spanish? I like the looks of the Spanish.
The white-faced black Spanish are in the Mediterranean class.
Okay. Those are big birds for that class. Yeah.
Yes, they're right up there with Minorcas.
Okay. Yeah.
Matter of fact,
Hey.
some folks years ago used to refer to them as white-faced Minorcas.
I'm going in November for an education. So ask me this next year, and hopefully I have better answers for you.
All I could think of was coaching for Asiatic, and I was like, no, that's got to be wrong.
Yeah,
There aren't
Coach,
very
you're
many.
absolutely right.
There aren't very many in that
No,
category, are there?
no, there's not.
Okay.
But Asiatic birds played a big role in the development of a lot of our American breeds, and that's where we got the brown-shelled eggs from. Was from the Asiatic birds.
Ask me about the dog classes next time. I got that down better.
Karen, this is not a dog show program. Sorry.
Just
Nice
kidding.
try, but
All right.
the Bantam classes, you have games, and that would be your modern games and your old English games. Single comb clean leg, or SCCL, that would be your leghorns and your reds and your Japanese Bantams. Rose comb clean legs, that could be reds too. Reds are two varieties, single comb and rose comb, as are your leghorns. So
It's interesting that Bantams decided to go. Was the APA was before the ABA, right?
yes.
So I mean, when ABA happened, they're like, let's go with totally different categories. Let's go with their legs. Let's focus on their legs, right?
Or their comb.
Okay. So it's just
Then you have the all other comb clean legged, or AOCCL, and the feather legged. Here again, here's your silkies, okay? Silkies, cochins, brahmas, and those sorts of birds. And birds at a show are grouped in these classes, and within the class you find the various breeds, and within the breeds you find the various color varieties. That's the best way to try to remember it. When we get over to ducks, that's a whole nother ball game. Ducks go by size. You have your heavy breeds, your medium breeds, your light breeds, and your bantam breeds. Heavies would be like your Ruins and your Pekins. Mediums would be like your Khaki Campbells, Cayugas. Lights would be runner ducks. Incidentally, if you like duck eggs, runner ducks are amazing layers. They will lay just as good as any chicken around almost. They are egg laying machines. They just look like umbrellas on feet. They're pretty comical to watch them run around. And bantam ducks, like your call ducks and your East Indies ducks, those are examples of bantam ducks. Then we get over to geese. You have, again, by size, heavy breeds, medium weight breeds, and lightweight breeds. And then our other two classes are turkeys and guineas. Karen, how many breeds of turkeys do we have?
one.
There you go. Winter. I started to say chicken dinner, but in this case, turkey dinner. There are several different color varieties, like your bronze, your whites. They are not separate breeds. They're just different color varieties. The breed is turkey, and the different colors are the varieties. Same thing with guineas.
So they all have the same character. They all have the same body structure, shape.
Basically, now there's some variations in size, which that in itself will cause some
Confirmation.
variation
Okay.
in weight. For many, many years, for example, in turkeys, your whoops, turkeys, bronze was the most popular turkey to have on your farm and to raise for meat. Then they found some white sports, uh, found some black sports, the bourbon reds, which to me is a very striking color when they're right. That beautiful dark red, almost like a Rhode Island red with white wings and tails. Uh, but all of them descended from the wild turkeys that we have here. Uh, Back when I worked for the Game and Fish Commission, I was in Gainesville, Florida, at our wildlife research lab, uh, picking up some old books there, old magazines that somebody had sent me, and I just happened to run across our turkey biologist, and he was sorting through study skins in the lab, and he had beautiful, beautiful uh, royal palm colored wild turkeys, uh, several different color varieties, but they were all wild turkeys. They were not domestic birds at all. Even the royal palm is a color variation of a wild turkey. And guineas are right up there with call ducks as the noisiest birds in the show, bar none. Uh, I don't know if I had to pick who was the noisiest, a guinea or a call duck. It would be a real toss up because both of them can raise a ruckus when they really want to.
However, call ducks are much cuter.
They are cute. Those,
They get a
those
little
puggy
leg
cheeks.
up for being adorable. Yeah,
That's because you never had any at your house. I can
that's true.
tell.
That's true.
Your neighbors would not like you if you started breeding call ducks.
There are guineas. There are guineas that run through my space, but
Lucky you.
they seem to be able to get into the fence and not out of the fence.
Who do they belong to?
Yeah, that's a good question. Guineas they're not owned. Yeah.
Well,
You
okay.
may
So
think
so
you've
who
seen
who
guineas.
invited them to the habitat? How's that? All right. Who introduced them into your paradigm?
No idea.
Hmm.
They run the neighborhood. I've had them. We've had a group that ran up and down the street for a couple years ago, but nobody claimed to own them. But they visited all the houses every day.
Well,
So
other than being a nuisance, they do eat ticks, so they do have a benefit in life.
yeah. Funny looking birds.
That's for sure. So, like I said, those are the classes, the broad general classes that different breeds are lumped into, uh, and then within the classes are all the breeds in that class. Now, trust me, you're not going to have all the breeds in one class at one show. Just not going to happen.
Not even at Ohio.
Not well. They're going to come close at Ohio, but there may be a few breeds like red caps that may not be there.
That may not exist. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Murray McMurray's got some that are really not bad looking, but you know, uh, I used to use sultans as an example that you don't normally find at a show, and they're coming back in popularity. Lamonas were, for all practical purposes, extinct, but they have been recreated and they're popping up at shows. Really nice looking birds too. Really nice birds. So we talked about the breeds being divided at the shows by classes. Now the breeds are also divided by varieties. Typically it's either different color birds, or it could be different comb types. Leghorns are a good example. You can have black, man, you probably won't see too many black leghorns. White leghorns, dark brown leghorns, light brown leghorns, black-tailed red leghorns. You can have all of those. And all of the varieties are divided by sex: cocks, hens, cockerels, and pullets. Now, when you're doing going through a show, you look on a coop card. You may not see. They probably won't write out cock, hen, cockerel, and pullets. They usually use C for cock, H for hen, and K for a cockerel. And I'll get into some more information on that coop card as we get into that section. Karen jumped the ship on me.
I just thought maybe that's a coop tag, but that one had a check mark. That was a very professional coop tag. Yeah.
That's an APA style coop tag. Not all will be that precise or professional looking. A lot of shows have computer software programs that will generate coop tags on 3x5 cards or 4x6 cards. So the format may change, but all the basic information is going to be on there.
And all of that self-explanatory, other than the K, right?
Yeah.
You just can't use a C for both. So
right.
Cockerel gets the K. Yeah.
Right. It took me a couple of 3 shows to figure that out because it was confusing. Now, judges, when they're going through there, are looking for basically 4 things. First is how well does that breed fit within the breed or variety standard, the written standard? How well does it meet that? They're looking for type, and the majority of the points that you can get in the show on each bird comes from type. 75% of the points come from that. Then they're looking at color. Is the color right for the variety? And they're looking at the condition of the bird. Now, by condition, they're looking at feather quality. They're looking at the body fleshing on a bird. I would also evaluate females and males to some extent in some classes for how I thought they were producing, what their production ability might be. A lot of judges don't look at that. A lot of exhibitors don't look at that. But the standard says that judges, exhibitors, and breeders should pay due attention to the production ability of standard bred poultry. And by not doing that, we wound up with so many breeds that are not really as productive as they were back in the 50s. Karen, I know you went through that and you increased the production on your Rhode Island Reds, but it probably was not all that spectacular when you first started, if I just had to guess.
It's still not spectacular, but it is better. But if y'all haven't ever read if your breeds were ones that were ever used in the research stations in the 30s, that paperwork, all those books and journals are available easily online. So you might be looking at studies, but there'll be listings of what breeds were used. Yes. And then what their lay rates were, even just as a casual aside. You know what I mean?
And it's a fascinating read if you know if you're into that stuff, like I know you and I are.
Yeah.
So that's what a judge is looking for. And first he places usually the cocks, then the hens, then the cockerels, and then the pullets. They judge them 1st through 5th place. A few breeds take it a little bit further. If it's national meet, they may go to 7 or 8, or they may go to 10. Old English games here in the South, they want that whole class of cocks, hen, cockerels, and pullets. They want that whole group judged 1 through 10. So it takes a little more time to place a class of Old English. Then once they have all of the varieties done in a breed, then they'll go back and they'll pick the best of variety and the reserve of variety. Some folk think it may be if your best of variety is a male, the reserve needs to be a female, but that's not true. I have judged many classes where the best 2 birds in a variety were the same sex. So, and after they have judged all the varieties in a breed, they go back and look at all the best of variety birds and pick the very best one for best of breed. And then they'll pick a reserve of breed. And when they do all the breeds in that class, then they'll go back and look at all the best of breed birds and select the one who's the class champion and reserve class champion. And then they can go on and compete on up for higher placings as well.
And you've got to do all of that sort of by memory, but also by running around. Like
Yes.
chicken, because you're not moving those birds. You're
No.
looking at that bird over there, and then that bird over there, and then that bird over there, and
There's
deciding which one you like better.
there's maybe some times when I would send a clerk to, if I was judging single comb clean leg bantams, and I was looking at a white Plymouth Rock, and I'd say, hey, go get me the best of breed Rhode Island Red and bring him over here. And I may look at them side by side, because if they're very close, it can be the tiniest little thing sometimes that makes a difference between the winner and almost ran.
And is it ever what because the first one pecked you?
No.
Okay.
Just a minor peck. I don't
Just
hold
check.
against.
Okay.
It's the one that had come after me with blood in her eyes that
Okay. All right.
don't do well.
All right. Just checking.
Jeff, I know you said you had some questions about judging earlier.
Well, so as I listen and I learn, it seems like they're not really judging on weight. Birds aren't necessarily hitting their weight for the standard, but yet, they're still allowing them to be judged. And I mean, as a judge or as an outsider looking in, aren't we supposed to be using the standard, the breed standard as our guidelines? But, and I see, show chickens, and I look at them and I feel them, and they're way overweight. They're really fat. They're pretty, right? They've got a lot of aesthetics, but they're not true to the standard. And that, I'm just wondering, where, as a judge, how do you deal with that? But
if you handle enough birds on a regular basis and you weigh your own birds at home, you get a pretty good idea for what a 7-pound bird feels like in your hands. If I find one that is over a little bit or under a little bit, then I can cut points out of that condition score. Now, I realize it's not exact, and yeah, it would probably be nice if we could weigh all the birds in the show, and they used to do that, but the shows used to last for a week, and you had time. They would take 3 or 4 days to judge a show, and now they want it done from 9 to 5. I was at one show, they started at 9, they wanted it done by 2 o'clock.
Yeah, it seems like the only way you could really do that is at check-in. That if you took the disqualified birds and didn't put them in a cage.
Yeah.
Like if they were truly disqualified at the time of entry. Yeah. But I'm not suggesting that. I don't care.
No. It would be a genuine pain, as much as I would like to see birds weighed sometimes. It would be a genuine pain to weigh birds in a show. And that's why I get so aggravated with folks say, well, I've never weighed my birds. Well, how do you know if they fall within the standard guidelines? You don't, unless you're weighing your birds.
All right. Tell us what the guideline is. Give us the little blurb.
What?
The weight guidelines.
Well, you're allowed to go 20% over the standard weight or 20% under the standard weight.
Okay. So there is
anything
a decent
more
range.
Or less than that should be a disqualification.
Yeah. And for my birds with their size, that's 1.5 pounds, almost a 1.8 on the males in either direction, which is a decent chunk of wiggle room, but it does not allow for 12-pound males.
No.
You still have 12-pound males?
We're not talking about my birds.
Okay. All right.
Oh, mercy. Let's go back. Karen, if you'd pull up that coop card image,
okay.
I want to delve into that a little bit more, and I'm going to make mine full screen so I can actually see it with my old eyes. If you look at the top, you can see it's listed a variety is white. Coming down underneath that, the breed is Plymouth Rock. And over on the check boxes on the side, you can check whether it's a large, or in this case, a bantam, duck, goose, turkey, or something else. I told you that birds were assigned exhibitor numbers. And here it's listed, the exhibitor number is shown under the entry number. All exhibitors are given an exhibitor or entry number, and that's what will appear on these coop tags in place of a name. And over on the right, they can check off the sex. This was a cockerel. They also have a place for an old trio and a young trio. A trio is a male and two females, and old trios are over a year old, and young trios are under a year old. Uh, Now, if you look in this award remark box, there's some markings in red. Over on the right, it says BV and BB. That BV means it was the best of variety. BB means it was best of breed. The check marks and the plus signs are just how judges make notes. We do not all use the same system. So if you're trying to figure it out, it's not going to be consistent from one judge to the next. Some folks use minuses, some folks use X's and O's, and just whatever works best for that judge. This is a card that I dummied up here, but I use check marks. I got a check mark for type, a check mark for color, and a check mark for condition. And if they were really good in those areas, they got a plus sign to go with it. So that just means they were strong in that particular area. And that's how I keep track, because if you have just a small number of birds in a group, yeah, you can pretty well know who's on first and who's on second and on down. But if you get a large class of 40 or 50 birds of the same breed and the same variety and the same sex, oh, it's easy to lose track. And sometimes I will even turn the coop tag up. Most of them are hung on today with those little pinch type paper clips, and I'll just turn it up or bend it up or twist it through the wire or something, just so I can see at a glance on those big classes who really impressed me as I was going through and handling those birds.
You had to feed into the stereotype here and put a white Plymouth Rock as a champion. Way to go. Yeah.
Down at the bottom, this bird was also champion single comb clean leg. And that means he moved on up to champion row. And the champion row, they have all the class champions and reserve class champions. And he was selected as champion Bantams because all the class champions compete for champion and reserve champion Bantam, or large fowl, or light duck, heavy duck, medium duck, or same thing with geese, same thing with turkeys, same thing with guineas. And this bird was also selected as reserve show champion. So that meant he was the second best bird in the show overall, over all the birds there. The judge told me one time when I was apprenticing under him, he said, "Son, you're only going to make one person in the show happy, and that's the one who won show champion. Everybody else is going to hate you."
And so just do the real quick, just from because you can do the same for a large fowl. So you're going to have best of variety.
Yep.
And you're going to have best of breed.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have champion.
Class champion.
American.
Yes.
Because all of the American birds are the best.
Right.
And then you're just at champion large fowl.
Correct.
And then, of course, since
the champion large fowl, the champion bantam, the champion waterfowl, and the champion turkey, and the champion guinea, those birds all compete for.
So there's two chickens in that. So there's two chickens, and then all the other species.
All the other types of poultry.
Poultry, okay.
At least all the other types that's recognized by the APA or the ABA.
And entered into the show. So.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Probably a duck one this show.
It's not infrequent that you see a duck as grand champion of the show.
Yeah. Probably because they've seen baby ducklings, and those are the cutest animals in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty much all I got to say, but I just want to encourage you, if you have never been to a show, you need to go at least once, because you will be amazed at all the different breeds and all the different color varieties you're going to see. The bigger the show, the more breeds and the more color varieties you're going to encounter within those breeds. It will open your eyes as to what all's out there and just what the quality of standard bred poultry can be when they're bred right. So please, if you've not gone to a show, even if you have no intention to show, and I would encourage you to go to a show and learn, make some friends, and just have a fun experience while you're there.
Well, we've got some questions for you.
I thought we might.
But even in Ongshankin show, so in North Carolina,
Mhm.
there's the state fairgrounds are near Raleigh, and so they have the poultry show, and they're all week. Those poor birds have to be checked in and stay all week long.
Well, if I remember correctly, North Carolina has two poultry shows. They have an open show and a youth show. So it's just a few days that the birds are there.
Okay, we'll argue about that later. But you can walk through and see them, and you don't have to go at that one particular day. But just know that every bird that you see sitting in a cage in front of you is not a champion. So, especially at a county fair.
Yes.
So, all right. So, questions. Let's see. We're going to start with this one. So, April says that her husband judged a county fair last year and was surprised because the kids were stalking him. So,
I have had that happen, April.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
So.
Because she's right. Kids at a county fair, I know they're forest leaders and FA leaders. Tell them, talk to the judge, find out what he liked and what he didn't like. And that's fine in that situation. It just wouldn't fly at an open show because there's too many birds and too little time. So we can't take time for that, so, unfortunately.
All right. Rob wants to know, are there ways to show birds that are breeds that are not accepted into the APA or colors that the APA does not accept?
Absolutely. You can show them. You can enter them in the show. They cannot, if it's a breed that's not recognized, they can't place any higher than best of breed. Or if it's a new color, they can't place any better than best of variety. They can't go any higher than that. But yeah, you can show them, you can get them out there. And if you're working with these new breeds and new color varieties, I would encourage you to do that because the more those birds are seen, the more judges look at them, the easier it's going to be down the road to get them accepted by the APA and the ABA. Plus, that's going to make them popular with the public.
I'm pretty sure Rob's working on an iridescence project where he's trying to get that, that in a blackbird to get more of that iridescent color to the feathers.
Mm-hmm.
And so would that still be judged as a black? And when he gets to where he wants to show that bird, is that iridescence going to work against him? If you were the judge, right, and you come up, it's still a black, but, it's got that extra luster, so to speak. Is that going to be?
Actually, that's something we want to see when we're judging poultry.
Okay.
I want a bird that has really good sheen, is in really good condition.
Well, it's going to be that iridescent, purples and greens.
The bluish purple end of the spectrum than he is with the green.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'd pick a name that he likes that fits what he's trying to do. It may be Black Jewel. I'm just using that for an example.
Purple Passion. Yep.
Purple Passion. There you go. But since he's doing something different, he's probably going to have to do it as a new breed.
Because if you put them in as a black Australorp, then you're going to be like, they're not supposed to be
They're
purple.
not going to do well at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But you could still, if he pulled up a line of 12 of those, are you going to tell him which of those 12 you like the best?
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's 10 or 12 of them there, I'm still going to pick best of variety and reserve of variety. Okay. If I know what they're supposed to look like.
So write something up. Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just going to have to pick based on condition of the bird.
Okay.
So if you have a standard, just even if it's a working standard, draft standard, whatever you want to call it, and you're entering some of these birds at the show, Rob, take your standard and give it to the judge before he starts judging them. So he knows what the bird is supposed to look like. And that way, he can do the best job for you evaluating those birds. I don't know how many times I've seen birds at shows and new color variety and or a new breed. I've never seen them before. I don't know what they're supposed to look like. All I can go on is how good's the condition on that bird. And that doesn't That's not fair to the birds. It's not fair to the exhibitor because they're paying for a good evaluation of those birds. Just my 2 cents on that. I'll get off my apple cart here.
Well, and the new varieties or the ones that are looking for acceptance, they always want you to have a written standard there for the judge.
If you're going through the acceptance process, yes, you have to submit a draft working standard for the breed or for the color variety. If it's something that's just hitting the market, so to speak, and you haven't applied for application to the APA yet, you don't have to have one, but I certainly recommend that you do have a working standard, at least that you can show to the judge so he can do the best job of evaluating your birds.
Michelle wants us to know that you can have lots of questions while you're there, things you never thought you'd need to ask, but how to get your birds into the cage.
That can be a challenge, Michelle, as I think you know. The large fowl, you kind of got to pinch both sides of the door and one side of the coop to get it to squeeze open and open it that way. And the bantam coops, that door just slides up and down. But I think Michelle's got large fowl. So, yeah, it can be a challenge. And if those coops, as they get old and they get beat up, they can be sometimes you get to use both hands to try to squeeze it open.
Well, and she brings up a good point, though. Tell us what a show secretary is and what do they do?
A show secretary is the person who keeps all of the records for the show. They handle all of the entries, all of the placings, and all of the show reports. A show superintendent actually runs a physical show itself. You know, he takes care of the logistics. He takes care of show management the day of the show.
He or she.
Yes, he or she. Didn't used to be many she's, but thank goodness more women are getting active in all phases of the hobby. I think that's great. And just bear one thing in mind, folks. These folks that are putting these shows on aren't paid to do that. They are strictly volunteers. So, you know, they got a big job, and I've done both jobs, and I don't envy them for what they're doing.
All right, we're just going to have 2 more comments here, Rip, and then we'll let you go since we're over our hour and you've been talking a long time. So,
okay.
So Danny Feathers, everybody knows, well,
yes,
people know. So this is back when we're talking about getting in and talking to the people. There you go. I can't read that, so you can.
Yeah, Danny was a great guy. He was a tremendous breeder of a lot of different breeds and a lot of different color varieties. Probably the most knowledgeable person I have ever run across on breeding poultry. And when he passed away, that was a very significant loss for the poultry world. I had the opportunity to do an audio recording with Danny on. We touched on several different topics, but it was all centered around breeding. But I did that with the APA, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And you know, every time Danny was one of those persons. Every time I was around him, I learned something new.
Rip, are you hearing any scuttlebutt about? Is there any talk about letting the American game fowl, the large, because you know? Like Stovepipe says, they're allowing the bantams, but you know, when are they going to start? Because there's been a couple standards written. It's like, you know, when are they going to let them show?
I know that came up one time years ago. I don't know what the reason was they did or didn't do it. Okay, and I know it has come up in earlier mutations or of the shows here in America. Now we do allow large fowl games as long as they meet the Old English characteristics or type and color patterns, and they're shown as Old English games, just not bantams.
All right, but not as an American game.
But somebody's got to spearhead that and follow the process from the beginning till the end.
Yeah, they've been pushing it. I really think the APA is being standoffish only because of the old sport of fighting them. I'm wondering if there's a fear factor there or an association thing. They
Probably
just don't
so.
want that attention. Yeah.
I can't say that for sure.
That's just kind of a gut feeling I've got. Is
Yeah.
they're just holding them back because of.
And
Yeah.
Sharon's right. You got to have a breed club established, an active breed club, to actually initiate that process of recognition.
Yeah. Well,
just
and I mean, it's a huge process. It's a long one. It's a lot of people that have to cooperate, and
it's a minimum of 5 years.
yeah. So
Well,
that group has to hold together through that whole time, and those are people that compete against each other.
Right.
So I mean, it's not simple to keep everybody agreeing on what standard to use and what.
I said it was a 5-year process. It's actually longer than that. It's probably closer to 6 or 7 years, because you've got to document folks that are breeding and raising the breed and the varieties for at least 5 years, and having shown them, then you've got to go through a pre-qualifying show where the birds are evaluated by a licensed judge, and then you have to have a qualifying show or meet for.
Well, I know the game fowl people won't have any trouble proving they've been breeding them for years.
Well,
the individual people.
Yeah, but I mean, they've been showing them, through the GBA. They've been showing them. They've been breeding them. Yeah. They've really met. From what I understand, they've already met the prerequisites. It just seems like the APA is stonewalling. I didn't know if you had any insight or not, Rip. Because you're closer to those people than I am.
I honestly, I haven't worked closely with the APA in a couple of 3 years, and I haven't, primarily because I don't have the time anymore. But I haven't heard any scuttlebutt. But I'm sort of out of the loop on that now.
All right. Yeah, you don't have any old friends up there that you can ask that question to, you, or even somebody that's been on the board in the past that might give you some insight. Because I know I know the game fowl community is irritated because they won't let them come and participate.
Right.
And
I can understand that.
It's time to get past it, because there's some gorgeous birds, in that game fowl community. So
I know at the gosh, I forget the name of the show out in Oklahoma. Dadgum, I'm sorry, folks, I've gone brain dead. The years that I judged out there, they had game fowl shown in that show, but it was a separate game fowl association type show. And you're right, there's some magnificent birds in there.
Yeah, I mean, those guys put as much effort into their birds as anybody else does. So, or a large amount of them do anyway. But anyway, I was just curious if you knew anything. So
now, I really haven't, but I've got a couple of folks that I know that I can that are no longer on the board, but they would know more about what's going on than I would at this point.
I'd be curious to know. All right. Yeah, we're over our hour.
We're going to end with biosecurity. So Rob talks about that there's a decent chunk of people that bring, they don't bring their best birds because they don't plan on bringing them home. But some people do that. Some people don't. Rip brought his best birds and he took his best birds home. Yeah.
Yes. I can honestly say that in all the years that I was actively showing, I never brought an illness home. I did get some mites at a show one time, but after that, I just, as a routine, I changed my routine. When I started boxing up birds to go home, I hit them with a couple of shots of Adderall flea spray, and I didn't have any more problems after that. But yeah, you do need to practice good biosecurity. And, if you wear clothes to the show, don't wear those same clothes around your birds until you get them clean.
So even as a participant, I mean, even if you're not participating, if you're just a spectator,
yes,
then you still have to be careful going home again.
Don't want to bring any cooties home.
How do you avoid doing that, Rep?
You look for them.
You look for the cooties? You look, check
now,
the bottom of your
what are you going to do with those clothes you wore at the show there, Rip?
I wash them in the washing machine, hot water.
He's not going to say it.
That's not what he said earlier. He says you just burn them and drive home naked.
That's right. What he told us. Yeah.
This is a family show, Jeff.
Okay.
I'm trying to keep it cleaned up to a certain point.
All right.
All right. Tell them what we're going to talk about next time.
Next time, it's going to be all about stress. If you're not stressed, watch this show and we'll show you how to get stressed. No, it's all about stressing your birds. You know, it's hot weather right now, and our birds are suffering. But it's not just heat stress that we have to worry about with our birds. So we're going to cover heat stress. Don't worry about that. But we're going to talk about some of the other stress factors as well that can affect your flock and their ability to perform the way you want to. So join us in 2 weeks for All About Stress.
And what can they do in the meantime?
They can listen to the Poultry Keepers podcast. You can find it on Buzzsprout. You can find it on Apple Podcast. You can find it on Amazon Podcast. You can find it on a whole lot of different places.
And y'all be glad to know I'm not on there, so you don't have to worry about that.
No, we're going to get you on there. You just don't know it yet.
No, you're not. So, all
Now,
right.
the last couple of shows, we sort of reworked a couple of old shows that I did with Jeff back when he and I first became acquainted, and they have been very well received. But we're talking about a wide variety of poultry-related topics, not just show poultry, not just backyard poultry, not just homesteader poultry, but we're going to get there all together all pretty soon. So we try to upload a post every Tuesday. We didn't get one up last week because I was ill, but you know, we'll have another show up shortly. Poultry Keepers podcast.
All right. See you next time, guys.
Have a good evening, folks. Bye-bye.
See y'all later.